Hare Kṛṣṇa.
Hare Kṛṣṇa, dear devotees. Please join us today in the study of Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we'll be studying Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 12, Chapter 6. Mahārāja Parīkṣit passes away. Hare Kṛṣṇa, please join us for Jai Radha Madhav prayers. us for Mangalacharan prayers together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udivye Shratam Swakatha Kṛṣṇa Punya Shamala Kirtanaha Hridayam Tastohya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhatsatam Nashta Prayeshva Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatir Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhakti Naishtiki. Hare Kṛṣṇa, dear devotees. So today we will be covering Srimad Bhagavatam. Today we will be studying Srimad Bhagavatam 12th Canto, Chapter 6. Mahārāja Parīkṣit passes away. So that was the initial aspect, right? 7 days before it all started and Srimad Bhagavatam was recited. Please join us in the recitation of the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 12, Chapter 6. Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Vacha.
Etan nishamya munina vihitam parikshit.
Etan nishamya munina vihitam parikshit.
Vyasatmajena nikhalatma darsha samena.
Vyasatmajena nikhilatma darsha samena.
Tatpadamulam upashratya natena murdhana.
Tatpadamulmupsritya natena murdhana.
Baddhanjalistam idam ahasa vishnurataha.
Baddhanjalistam idamahasa vishnurata.
So this verse can also be spoken in a second, another meter. So let's also cover that. Sutta Uvacha.
Sutta Vacha.
Etam nishamya munina vihitam parikshit.
Etan nishamya munina vihitam parikshit.
Vyasatmajena nikhalatma drasha samena.
Vyasatmajena nikhilatma drisha samena.
Tadapadamulam upashratya natena murdhana.
Tatpadamulmupasritya natena murdhana.
Baddhanjalistamidam mahasa vishnurataha.
Baddhanjalistamidamahasa vishnurata.
Hare Kṛṣṇa. By the disciples of His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Sutta Goswami said, after hearing all that was narrated to him by the self-realized and equipoised Shukadev, the son of Vyasdev, Mahārāja Parīkṣit humbly approached his lotus feet. Bowing his head down upon the sage's feet, the king, who had lived his entire life under the protection of Lord Vishnu, folded his hands in supplication and spoke as follows. Purport. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, some of the sages present while Shukdev Goswami was instructing King Parikshit were impersonalist philosophers. Thus the word Samena indicates that in the previous chapter, Shukdev Goswami had spoken the philosophy of self-realization in a way pleasing to such intellectual yogis. Hare Kṛṣṇa. Please join us in Guru Pranati. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshitarine Om Ajnana Timrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripatadaham vande Shri Gurum Deenataranam. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rāma, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Kṛṣṇa, dear devotees. So yes, this is the time when in this particular chapter is described, and as we heard in the very first verse, who is speaking? Sutta Goswami is speaking. Till now Shukdev Goswami is speaking, and what has happened in the previous chapter is where Shukdev Goswami completes his narration, right, of Srimad Bhagavatam. And then he asks Parīkṣit Maharaj, first he says that, oh my dear king, meditate your mind, constantly absorb your mind in thinking of the name, form, activities, pastimes of the Supreme Lord, Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. And so you will become one. So when he said that, there were many impersonalists sitting in the crowd, and they felt, yes, this is the concept that we can merge into Brahman and we can become God. So to satisfy even those philosophers, because it is very clearly given, in the Shastra scriptures, Vadanti tat tattva vidash tattvam yajnanam avyayam brahmeti paramatmi bhagwan iti shabdate. So, this is in Naimisharanya, Sutta Goswami. So again, this is where this chapter started. Sutta Goswami at Naimisharanya is speaking to the sages, headed by Shaunaka Rishi. And he had revealed earlier in conversation that people who are transcendentalists, seeking absolute truth, recognize absolute truth in three forms. Brahmeti, Brahman effulgence, Paramatmeti as the super soul, Paramatma living in the heart of every living entity, and Bhagwan, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa himself. So, because there was some Brahmanwadi sitting in the crowd, among the sages, at the bank of Ganges, when Shukdev Goswami is reciting the whole Srimad Bhagavatam and describing in a beautiful name, form, activities and pastimes of Transcendental Supreme Personality of Godhead, in this assembly. So this was very nice for the impersonalist sages to hear. There were many impersonalist philosophers in that gathering. So they felt, yes, see, we can merge into God, and then when we merge into Brahman, we can become God. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reveals in his pastimes that this is a very offensive thinking. We are one in quality but different in quantity. So that's Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. And sometimes this philosophy, because we have material senses, we cannot perceive it. But yes, we can understand it, right? So we can understand, as revealed by the Acharyas, that yes, just like a drop of the ocean water has the same quality as that of the ocean water, but at the same time the drop of water from the ocean is limited in quantity, while the ocean is unlimited, right? So from that perspective, we can understand that yes, we have the same quality but different quantity. We are minuscule and Lord is magnanimous, He is unlimited. We are finite, He is infinite. So that way we can relate and understand. So when he is saying Samena, so he is referring to the word Samena from the perspective that we, have the same quality. So Lord is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? And Purusha also means enjoyer. So yes, He is the Supreme Enjoyer. And we are enjoyed. Yet at the same time, we feel joy when we serve the Supreme Enjoyer. Lord has one name, beautiful name, Govinda. Go has two meanings, cows or senses, right? So, Vindam is the one who gives pleasure to. But who is He giving pleasure to? He is giving pleasure to the cows. So remember the Vrindavan pastime. He would take the cows for cow herding to the jungle, and all those cows would be immersed when He would play flute. When they were, hearing, their ears were constantly hearing, and they would get so absorbed that they forget to chew the grass in their mouth. And in that state, they appeared like pictures. They were so still, they appeared like statues. While the trees, which are normally stable and stationary, they would be swinging back and forth. So now the nature of things would change. The moving things will appear non-moving, and the non-moving things would appear moving. So that is the beautiful description. And also the second is senses. Our senses are fully satisfied and we become joyful. We experience transcendental bliss. And how do we experience transcendental bliss? Not by requesting the Lord to give me this, give me that, and hoarding, right? He is not our order supplier, rather we are His servants. We are His order suppliers. We have to engage our senses in serving the Supreme Lord, Rishikesha. So when we engage our senses in serving the Supreme Lord, Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, who is all attractive. So His all attractive form, when He is served by our senses derive transcendental bliss. And that is the, enjoyment, the Govinda, the one who gives pleasure to the senses. So we derive pleasure by properly engaging our senses in serving. Do you think it is sense gratification or serving Lord Kṛṣṇa? It is, of course, in serving Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, yes. Rishikesha, Rishikena, Sevanam Bhakti. Rishikena, Rishikesha, Sevanam Bhakti Ruchyate. So engaging our senses to satisfy Lord Rishikesha. So that is very important. And here, all this time, Parīkṣit Maharaj had been hearing about the name, form, activities, pastimes of who? Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. And when Sutta Goswami is revealing, in this particular, the first verse of this chapter, he is also referring to Parīkṣit Maharaj as Vishnu Rat, right? Vishnu Rat means the one who is protected by Lord Vishnu. So he was always under the protection of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even when he was cursed, he was under the protection. How is that possible? People sometimes, they have this bodily conception. We'll see sometimes people, they react, in a negative manner. That happens right here in this particular pastime. We see some react in a very negative manner, and that particular aspect has been revealed, that sometimes people are looking at the bodily conception. And when a son sees that the father is leaving his body, he becomes very angry. He wants to take revenge. Who's caused this? I want to make that person suffer. Well, making that person will not suffer, will not bring your father back, right? Will not bring our loved ones back. So it is very important for us to, in such moment of anxiety, take shelter at the lotus feet of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. And this taking shelter process starts simply with the chanting of the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So here, in this chapter, it is picking up from the previous chapter. Shukdev Goswami, the last verse in the previous chapter is where he is saying, my dear King Parīkṣit, I have described to you the glories of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa that we started with. That was the important question. Parīkṣit Maharaj had two questions. What should a man do? And then second question was, what should a man do who is about to face death, who is waiting for his death, And understanding that yes, this king is going to die in 7 days, Shukdev Goswami, what did he do? He only did Bhagavad Katha, right? Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is what a man should do all the time, and especially do it with greater energy at the, when he is near the last days of his life. So those are the instructions we get here, from this example. And at that time, Shukdev Goswami, he had already congratulated King Parīkṣit, and King Parīkṣit was feeling Mahārāja Parīkṣit. He was the emperor of the world. He was feeling fearlessness. So how to feel fearlessness? That has been also described. Just by taking shelter of the lotus feet of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, one can be fearless. Just by chanting the holy name, one can be fearless. Just by engaging in devotional service, one can be fearless. So anytime you are not doing this, you are in fearful state. once Srila Prabhupada, he was talking about fearlessness, and there was a man, in the assembly. He said that I am fearless. Srila Prabhupada immediately asked, when the traffic, light, it turns red, do you stop your car? He said, yes. And Srila Prabhupada said, that means you are fearful. You fear death, you fear an accident. So he could not respond. Yet at the same time, Srila Prabhupada very confidently stated that we are fearless, the devotees are fearless, because we take shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and fear personified is afraid of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. However, yes, next month onward we will see how Lord Kṛṣṇa is afraid of Mother Yashoda, right? And he is running away, in fear of her. So this is where Queen Kunti, we heard in the first canto, where she is, in amazement, in her prayers, she is singing that, my dear Lord, fear personified is afraid of you, but you are, running away from this gopi. He is referring to Yashoda Mai, in fear, So how is that possible? So this is special pastime. And Acharya has explained that Lord Kṛṣṇa was really fearful of Mother Yashoda. Then Mother Yashoda is going to catch him and give him a whack. She was holding a stick. So he was really fearful. So he was, from that perspective, when we see such a sweet pastime. And this is all about fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom fear personified is scared. So again, why is it? Because it is a very sweet, loving exchange between a mother and the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So here, Parīkṣit Maharaj has duly touched the feet of Shukdev Goswami and worships him, and then Shukdev Goswami leaves and all the sages leave. And now Sutta Goswami is narrating what happens this point onward. So from this chapter onward, so up to this chapter we heard Bhagavatam. Actually Bhagavatam is over, but this particular part is further carried out by Sutta Goswami, is to address how people react, because of the bodily conception of life, because of the relationship that are associated with the body. This is where even Arjun became bewildered at Kurukshetra, at the battle of Kurukshetra. Arjun was thinking that as a Kshatriya I should fight, but I see my teacher in front of me. So he was relating with the body, that this person is my teacher, so how can I fight with my teacher? Oh, Bhishma Pitama, he is my grandsire. How can I fight with my grandsire? Oh, these are my brothers and cousins and relatives. How can I fight with them? How can I have this? So his, various upadhis he had associated with the body, and his swadharma, his prescribed duty, they were in conflict with each other. And that's where the first chapter is related, as titled as Vishad Yoga. Because in that Vishad Yoga, Arjun is in that bewildered state. He takes shelter of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. He comes closer. Still yoga. Yoga means connecting to the Supreme. So that yoga connection, that connection happens. And similarly here, the connection is going to happen where not just Parīkṣit Maharaj, but he's also his son, Janmejaya. He is going to get further instructions about transcendental knowledge. So again, this is a very important chapter from that perspective, from that angle. When you look at it, that Mahārāja Parīkṣit, now he is meditating and he is ready, he is completely fearless. Why is he fearless again? Please comment. Why is Parīkṣit Maharaj fearless? And he is sitting in this meditation. Who is he meditating on? Right? Please write in the comments. And as he is meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, feeling fearlessness, what happens? Takshak comes. And Takshak comes disguised as a Brahmana. Now, before Takshak comes, there was an incident, two incidents that had already happened. One was that there was a sage, and his name was Kashyap. Now this is a different Kashyap than the sage Kashyap, who is husband of Diti, Aditi, and so many of other, Daksha's daughters. So this sage Kashyap had attained the mystic power through mantras, by recitation of mantras, that he could ward off the effect of any poison, especially from the snake. So Takshak, as he was heading on his way, he sees this sage Kashyap. He says that you can't ward off this, my poison. My poison visually burns the body. So this sage said, why don't you try it on this palm tree, as they were walking. So Takshak says, sure. He bites on the palm tree, and the palm tree, in flames, instantly burns down to ashes. And sage Kashyap just chants the mantra, and poof, again, all that effect is gone, the tree is back again. Now Takshak is thinking, if he keeps saying the mantra and I keep biting the king, it will be completely, foiled attempt. I'll run out of my poison, and then the king cannot be killed, which will actually put me in a difficult situation, because that's the task assigned to me. That was the prescribed duty assigned to Takshak. So he was in dilemma. So he figures out that this Kashyap, why is he going to the king, right? So now, as soon as Kashyap says that, oh, he's the emperor of the world, so if I'll do this and save his life, he will definitely reward me. He's like, I'll reward you more. This is a very common strategy people use today's time. So all these strategies are coming from the Puranic times, He's like, I'll give you more wealth than you can imagine, and king will never give you so much wealth. So he gives him a whole treasure chest filled with this valuable jewels and amazing diamonds. Takshak gives it to sage Kashyap. So when Kashyap Muni gets this amazing treasure, he says, okay, now I was going there to get treasure. I already got treasure. Why should I work hard and try to fight with this Takshak, right? And what if this Takshak bites me because of anger? So he basically, returns back. Now there is another incident that happens, that Takshak happens to meet Narad Muni. And Narad Muni says, so Narad Muni was there when Parīkṣit Maharaj and Shukdev Goswami, they were at the bank of Ganges. And so Narad Muni says, why are you trying to take on this task? This is such an abominable task. And he's such a pious king. And Takshak is saying, I'm only trying to do my duty. I have been assigned a task. I'm not thinking left or right. I'm just trying to do my duty. And understanding that, again, there are three different versions in the Shastras, but we'll, in short, just identify that Narad Muni understands that actually it is for the benefit of the king, because he is at this moment fully meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is constantly meditating. So this is perfect time. And where do we see such attitude, such mindset? King Kulshekhar. When King Kulshekhar, he was worshipping the deity, he was a young, very powerful king, and he was saying, oh my dear Lord, please, at this moment, I can think of you, I can meditate on you, I can see your beautiful form, my senses are perfect, and they are fully focused on your name form activities and pastimes. So please, let me die at this moment, and not at the moment when I am old, when my senses are failing me. I may not be able to think of you, I may not be able to chant your glories, I may not be able to hear your glories, I may not be able to see your glories, I may not be able to touch your lotus feet or the other devotees, other Vaishnavas. I may not be able to engage myself in devotional service when I am old. So this is a perfect time when I can see you, I can engage in devotional service, and my senses are perfect and they are perfectly meditating on your beautiful form. Please let me leave my body. Now, sometimes people say, okay, these are all Eastern references. Is there a Western reference? Oh, yes. So, we all hear about Julius Caesar, right? And how his father was killed by, conspiracy. And one of his uncle was involved. So, again, this is the play written by Shakespeare. And Shakespeare writes in this particular play that Julius Caesar had a perfect opportunity to kill his uncle when his uncle was praying, right? So his uncle was praying and meditating on Jesus, and Srila Prabhupada said we all accept Jesus as one of the acharyas, and Jesus always said that he is Son of God and Christ is the God. which is another name for Krishna, Christ becomes Kṛṣṇa and is Krishna in the East. So Prabhupada said that. So he identified that. He made that link and connection. So he's thinking that this is perfect time, I can kill this uncle of mine like he killed my father. But then he said no. He killed my father when my father was eating food. And he was in gross mindset. So people, when they are eating food and not meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just enjoying the senses, then the mode of ignorance is very prominent. Yet at the same time, devotees, even at that moment where the mode of ignorance may have effect, accept prasad, right? Prasad is mercy of the God. So mercy of Lord Shri Krishna, we accept food as prasad. And we call it, eating food, we call that particular activity as prasadam seva. By meditating on every morsel as we are eating, we are thinking, oh, this is how Lord Krishna tastes. This is how wonderful Lord Krishna is. And this is His mercy that we are getting, that is nourishing our body. And more than body, it is nourishing our soul. Because devotees like to offer bhoga to the, deities. And then that bhoga is transformed into prasad, as mercy of Lord Shri Krishna. And in that mode, when we take, we are always in transcendental state. So, because we are, with every morsel, we are meditating. And Srila Prabhupada even said that, even between, when you are picking up the food, every morsel, you should chant Hare Krishna. So, every moment we should be remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We should make a sincere effort, to constantly remember Lord Shri Krishna. And all we have to do is raise our hand and call out, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So Julius Caesar thought that I will not kill him because right now he is praying. So if I kill him, he may attain perfection. I would kill him in the state he killed my father. So again, that's how he arranges the whole situation when he is enjoying the drinks, and that's how he puts poison and everything. So again, this is a Western reference, and even in West, people understand the different time of the day used for different activities, right? They go to work 9 to 5, just like in East, right, where the mode of passion is strong. They like to do entertainment during the evening hours and night time, which is the mode of ignorance. Morning hours have a heavy influence of mode of goodness. So everyone wants to remember the Lord and sing different kind of prayers. So even we go to the churches, we see that they are, performing different kind of ceremonies in the morning time. So again, there may be different religions, different faiths, but the concept behind them, the God behind them is one, Sabka Malik Ek. So that is an important aspect, and it all starts with faith. Once Srila Prabhupada, when he was in Mid-East, so there the devotees were saying, Srila Prabhupada, half the time we, on the street when we go for Harina, we are chanting, Hare Krishna Mahamantra, and half the time we are calling out to Allah, Lord Allah. So which one is right? Because some of them had confusion and there was some internal conflict happening. Some were saying it is okay to chant Allah's name, or some were saying no, we should only chant Mahamantra. Srila Prabhupada said, don't make me sectarian, I'm a non-sectarian. This is transcendental knowledge above all sects. And when you chant Allah's name, it is remembering the Lord. When you chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, it is remembering the Lord. So focus on the purpose that we have to always remember the Lord, right? And when we remember the Lord, that's where we attain shelter, we attain the perfect protection, and we become fearless, we stay fearless. And finally attain perfection just by meditating. Now the name is so merciful, that is another glorious. The Lord's name is so merciful that once, it is a very nice story that appears in the Shastras, and more of Purana reference, or you can say Srila Prabhupada and others have identified this story, where this Muslim man, a Mohammedan, he was, he had the call of nature, and he went to, address this call of nature. But at the same time, when he was, relieving himself, a hog, a wild boar
attacked him. Now, boar or a hog, a wild hog, is called haram, right? It's abominable. So that's the meaning of the word haram. So he called out haram, haram twice. However, her Ram, when looked from our perspective, says, "Hey Ram, O Lord Ram." So from that perspective, he was chanting the holy name. So he attains perfection. So merciful is Lord's name. We have seen Yasajami's case, but here this example is given that the Lord's name is all merciful. And it can enable us even when chanted incorrectly or chanted, unknowingly. It will have its effect. Just like medicine, right? When we take medicine, we don't need to know what's the composition of the medicine. If the effect of the medicine will work. So similarly, Srila Rupa Goswami describes in Updeshamitra as that we are all inflicted with this false perception that we are this body. And Shukdev Goswami adds that sometimes we are thinking we are this body and mind, right? Or mind. So if we are thinking in this manner, then we are constantly accepting and rejecting things and seeking sense gratification, and that's not the purpose of life. However, when we understand that we are this, living entity, we are Jiva, a living entity, a spirit soul, and Jivera Suruphoya Kṛṣṇa Nityadas, then we have proper understanding of our position, that we are eternal servant and Lord is our eternal Father, eternal Master. So we should always be engaging in service, and that process is devotional service. So we engage in the 9 process of devotional service, and by serving them we attain the perfection. So what is the perfection? Perfection is to attain love of Godhead, to make our devotion so strong that we are constantly meditating on the lotus feet of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, constantly remembering his name, form, activities, pastimes. So our mind is very strong and a very great friend when it is constantly thinking of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. So Lord's name is very merciful, and we have to understand from the right perspective. Now Parīkṣit Mahārāja, as soon as Takshak bites him on his leg, immediately flames appear and he is immediately consumed and turned to ashes. Now when people hear this, they become angry or they become upset that this was the king of, emperor of the world, and this Takshak snake, Nag, has come and he has bitten this king and killed him. Well, what was the purpose of life? Purpose of life is to attain perfection, right, which is love of Godhead. Parīkṣit Mahārāja had already attained that perfection. Leaving his body at that time ensured him that he was able to go back home, back to Godhead. Yet at the same time, we give reference of Parīkṣit Mahārāja. Shravanam Kirtanam. So Shravanam is hearing. Who attained perfection by Shravanam process? Parīkṣit Mahārāja. And who attained perfection by Kirtanam? By the chanting or recitation of the name, form, activities, pastimes of the Supreme Lord and his devotees? Please write in the comment line. So here, as soon as this incident happens, everywhere there is big, uproar. Everyone is lamenting, oh, the emperor of the world is dead. He has been bitten and he has died. His body immediately turned to ashes. So his son, Janmejaya, the eldest son, he hears this news. And because he was in this bodily conception of life, he was thinking, I am this body, and this body was provided to me by my father, Mahārāja Parīkṣit, and because Takshak, who happens to be a Naga snake, he has killed my father, so I will perform a yajna where all these snakes will be called in and they will die. So he arranges this great sacrifice, and he calls qualified Brahmanas who are performing this sacrifice to, pull Takshak down and kill him. Now Takshak, as soon as he hears that, what does he do? What would you, if somebody is after your life, what would you do? You try to take protection of someone. Takshak seeks protection of his very dear friend. Now who's his dear friend? Happens to be his half cousin and half brother, Indra, king of the demigods. So they were very good friends. Takshak asks Indra to give him protection. And so Indra gives him protection and keeps him on his plane. And what happens is, plane means airplane. And so the Brahmanas, they are performing yajna, and very powerful snakes are, being attracted and falling into this fire of the yajna. And at that time, Janmejaya, King Janmejaya, is surprised that Takshak hasn't come yet. So he asks the Brahmanas, he asks, why is Takshak not here yet? Why is he not burnt in this, sacrificial fire? They say, because he's being protected by Indra. Hearing this, Janmejaya says, I would like you to even bring Indra into the fire. Now, Indra was protecting. Now, as soon as King Janmejaya makes this request to the Brahmanas, they start chanting mantras to make King Indra get also attracted and fall in the sacrificial fire and burn. So at that time, Takshak and Indra were in a plane and they fell from the plane. Yet, understanding that this is not appropriate, Brihaspati, son of Angira Rishi, Brihaspati is also the spiritual master of the demigods. He immediately approaches the sacrificial arena in the assembly of, King Janmejaya, and he identifies to King Janmejaya about the transcendental knowledge. He makes him realize that actually his father's body may have been burned, but his father has attained perfection. Now, in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said, as Sutta Goswami is explaining, that Brihaspati said that one's own is responsible for one's sins, right? And so the reactions would come in. While in Vishnu Purana and other places, it has been elaborately described that this particular incident happened where transcendental knowledge is being imparted by Brihaspati to King Janmejaya to make him understand that actually his father attained perfection, and body is nashwar, it is temporary in nature. So the body that we have will lose it one day, right? We are only guests in this world, material world. This is not a place to stay. Rather, we want to make an arrangement so that we can go back home, back to Godhead, because home is sweet home, right? We all have experience. Even in this material world, when you are on a travel, business travel or pleasure trip, when you come back to your home, then you feel sweet home. Yes, at this time, in these times of pandemic, you may have different feelings. And if you do have any negative feeling, there is more reason for you to gather your family members and engage in the chanting of the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. There's a very common saying. We used to study this when we were kids. दुख में सुमिरन सब करें, सुख में करे न कोई, जो सुख में सुमिरन करे, दुख काहे को होए. When there are bad times, then everyone remembers God. दुख में सुमिरन सब करे, सुख में करे न कोई. When there are good times, then nobody remembers Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But if one prays and engages in glorifying the Supreme Lord when one is in a good state, good condition, then there will not be any opportunity for the bad condition to even arrive. Right? Because one would be in transcendental state and the three modes of material nature won't affect one. So when Janmejaya gets this revelation that actually his father had attained perfection, and Brihaspati explains to him that your father's name was Vishnu Rat. Parīkṣit, yes, he was also known as Vishnu Rat, one who is protected by Lord Vishnu. So sometimes people ask this question. So if Lord Vishnu was protecting Parīkṣit Maharaj all the time, that was his name, always protected by Lord Vishnu, then how could he die? Because again, bodily concept of life is there. So sometimes people, they challenge this particular statement, his name also. Well, when Parīkṣit Maharaj was in the womb of his mother, Uttara, wife of Abhimanyu, at that time, Lord protected the child so that the progeny may go on. And now, Lord allowed Parīkṣit Maharaj's body to finish because of two purposes. What was the first purpose? So that Srimad Bhagavatam can rise as brilliant sun, right? So that people in Kali Age who have lost our vision, right? When we have lost our vision because of the darkness caused by the ignorance of this Kali Age, we'll get light and we can see things as it is, right? And we can properly engage in devotional service. That's the first purpose. And what's the second purpose? He is protected by Lord Vishnu. So Lord Vishnu wants to bring him home. That's the purpose of life. Not suffer in this material world anymore. So he is able to go back home, back to Godhead. Attain the goal of life, love of Godhead. So that is an important aspect. And when we look from this perspective, everything looks good. And now Janmejaya, having understood this, stops the yajna just in time so that Indra and Takshak, they are not destroyed. So now, as Shukdev Goswami had finished Srimad Bhagavatam recitation, Sutta Goswami has described this after events as how Janmejaya was provided instructions. Now Janmejaya was so lucky, he was provided instructions and then various recitations happened in his assembly. Yajna Valkya, he recited Mahabharata, various aspects. Shukdev Goswami also described very wonderful, Puranic descriptions in his assembly. Devashi Narad described. So again, he got one after another great personalities appeared in his assembly and gave him instructions so that he can carry out his activities as a righteous king. That's why in the old times the king were called Raj Rishis. They were like saintly kings, right? That's the reference. Now, as Sutta Goswami is reciting in Naimisharanya, he realizes that these are all, Brahmanas, high-class Brahmanas, who have very much great attraction to Vedas, because they are engaged in all these fire sacrifices, and to satisfy their heart. So it is very interesting that you have to speak as per the crowd, as per the audience. That is very important. And Srila Prabhupada used to give a very nice story in this regard. There was one Christian missionary. He had gone to mining area, a town of miners, and he was trying to preach them to take to, devotional service. And at that time, he was realizing that no one is able to, understand the message. He was giving, very strong preaching, lecture and discourse, but no one was able to relate to him. They were all asking, what is his number? Who is this Jesus guy? And so he understood that they had no conception from the view he had. So he brought himself to their view, because he had been describing hell as a place which is full of darkness, hot, humid and damp, right? And they all knew it. That's how a mine looks like. A coal mine looks like that. It feels like that. So it was nothing out of the normal for them. So he, realizing that they cannot relate to him, he brought it in their perception. He said, and there is no newspaper in hell. And now everyone was like, oh, no newspaper in hell. That is very bad. Because that is a very bad from their perception. And he was able to connect. So it's also very important that the speaker is able to connect with the audience. So Sutta Goswami is connecting with the audience, understanding that these Brahmanas are very much interested. So Shaunaka Rishi asks him about how did the Vedas appear? So of course it was already described in the first canto that Vyasdevji, he wrote the four Vedas. He actually wrote the Vedas is split into four Samhitas as it's given. So Sutta Goswami, he goes to the beginning. He says that when Lord Brahma, he woke up, when he took birth on this lotus flower, and at that time, he was wondering, who am I? What's the purpose of this life? Why am I here? And at that time, he heard the word tapa, meditate. He understood the meaning and he meditated for many years. And so he was able to understand. So from the heart, Brahma Hire Adi Kavye. So Lord Kṛṣṇa reveals from the heart of Lord Brahma the Vedas. So again, Aum, that has been revealed to him. And then Lord Brahma, from his four mouths, he is reciting Vedas. Now because four mouths are constantly reciting Vedas, it becomes very intermixed when somebody hears. So Vyasdevji, he clarifies it. He makes distinction and lays it out very nicely. And the four Vedas have been identified, and those four Vedas, Rig, Atharva, Yajur and Sama Vedas, have been entrusted to the disciples. So Vyasadeva ji, he first, tossed the first Samhita Rig Veda to Paila Muni, and then gave this collection a name Bhagavat. Then to the sage Vaishapayana, he spoke the collection of Yajur mantras, Yajur Ved, right, and named it Nigada. Then he gave the third Veda, Sama Veda mantras, designated as Chandogya Samhita, to Jaimini Rishi. And then the fourth, last but not the least, is the Atharva Veda that he gave to his dear disciple Sumantu. Now when Sutta Goswami is speaking about all this, he is definitely satisfying the heart of all the sages who were there, because they wanted to know more. And we talked about Yajnavalkya. So Yajnavalkya was a disciple of Vaishapayana, and it is described in the scriptures that Vaishapayana once, because of the influence of mode of ignorance, killed a Brahmana. So Brahmana Hatya, one cannot attain perfection. But his disciples, they were meditating, and Yajnavalkya went to his spiritual master. He said, your disciples are not doing it properly. I can alone do it so that you will be, rid of this reaction of having killed a Brahmana. Hearing this, Vaishapayana Rishi, he became very upset. He said, you immediately give back all the Yajur mantras that I have imparted to you, and you go away. And this is where we learn the lesson that when serving a spiritual master, one should not become jealous or, think of their god brothers, their other disciples of the spiritual master, to be lowly in front of them. You may have very great strength, very great fame, and so many other qualities, but you should respect everyone. Rather, we say respect all living entities, because every living entity is very dear to the Lord, so that the Lord resides in every living entity's heart as Paramatma. So that is a very important aspect for us to understand. Because of this offense that Yajnavalkya did, he was driven out and all the Yajur mantras were taken away. Now Yajnavalkya meditated on sun god, right, Vivaswan. But he was calling out that, sun god with reference to the light of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that the sun and moon are my eyes, and the universal form, if you remember. So right there, so again he is meditating and is worshipping sun god as a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So sun god Vivaswan, Surya Narayan we call him, because his form, he also has the four-arm form, and he is also holding, Gada, Chak, Padma and Shankh. So again, he satisfied Yajnavalkya by giving him these mantras, and so they have been also driven there. And now Sutta Goswami is describing how the different Vedas were further expanded into many more Vedas. And now sometimes people say, how could that be possible? How is it possible that they have been further expanded? Because as the Kali age is progressing, people are becoming more and more dull-headed. So they have to be described in easier and easier language at a greater length, right? So somebody is trying to show you how to do calculus, and you have never studied plus minus, it will become difficult. So that's why it takes so many years to come to the grade where you can understand calculus. So similarly, these secret knowledge, this is transcendental knowledge being explained further. Now you can attain perfection just by understanding Shiksha Ashtaka, just by understanding that, the heart of that. Yet at the same time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's disciples, right, they wrote so many books just to provide that insight, that just by doing Shiksha Ashtaka, understanding Shiksha Ashtaka, the 6 instructive verses that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wrote, 8. Ashtaka means 8. Shiksha means instructions. So the 8 instructions that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given us are sufficient. Yet at the same time, to understand those, we have to go deeper into the intricacies of each. And that's why we have so many Shastras. And we have to understand the essence. It's not that, yes, we know how to say mantra, and now we say the mantra and we are getting the name, fame and glories. No, that is not the goal of life. The goal of life is actually, those are anarthas, to stay away from them and engage in the devotional service to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. And that's why we chant the holy name, to become fearless and to attain perfection in this very life, right now. So we should all get together and call out to the Lordship with this mood of surrender. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Kṛṣṇa. So this is where this chapter ends, and yes, I was asked, where is this, the couple of pictures being given here in this page is Takshak biting Parīkṣit Mahārāja. Of course, that's also the cover picture of this 12th canto. And now here is the yajna that's being performed by Janmejaya, the son of Parīkṣit Mahārāja, where all the snakes are falling into the fire, as we can see. So all the snakes are getting attracted, and this was stopped by, Brihaspati. He gave the instruction. And that's also being revealed in this particular picture. Gantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavind ki jai. Please join us for Nasimadev prayers. Hare Kṛṣṇa.
जय, प्रहलाद महाराज की जय, शिला प्रभुपाद की जय, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna.